Ollie, thank you for speaking to the Canada Files. Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Oliver Vargas. I'm a reporter here in Bolivia at Kawsachun News, which is the English language service of Radio Kawsachun, which is a media outlet owned by the six federations of the Tropic of Cochabamba, which is the sort of, campesino unions that Evo Morales himself led before he reached the presidency. So we hope to communicate the voice and the struggles of the people who are fighting against the coup and for democracy in Bolivia.
All right, thank you. So I was wondering now, what inspired you to become a journalist?
Well, I mean, here in Bolivia, a lot of people ask me if I study the communication or journalism, and I studied history. My commitment is first to being able to help express, as I said before, the voices and struggles of people who don't receive coverage elsewhere. And it's like that I ended up in the field that I work in now. I went to work in Telesur English in Quito, and then after the coup in Bolivia, I came here to try and help out anywhere I could. But I think the issue of communication is so key to so many protest movements, so many struggles. I saw for myself firsthand how the reality of what was going on in Bolivia, not just in Bolivia, but throughout the Americas, in places like Venezuela, places like Nicaragua, the reality of what was going on was being completely distorted by mainstream media, and then those discourses that originate in sort of corporate media in the West then get taken on as formal foreign policy by governments such as the US, such as Canada, such as the UK, and most of the EU. So I think being able to sort of make a dent in that, in the English language, I think can help to bring about a change in how people see this region, see Latin America, and understand how power works on the sort of international, global level.
Yeah, definitely. Independent media is honestly so crucial to break the mainstream media and their pattern of following the policy desires of governments. So I want to ask basically, how do you see the really like a proper relationship between like reporters and social movements? So I ask that specifically because in mainstream media across the world, there's this inherent push for neutrality, no matter what.
Yeah, so I imagine that a lot of mainstream media reporters would say that what we do here at Radio Kawsachun and Kawsachun News is not objective journalism because we're formally linked to something quite real, something, a concrete movement that exists, and we exist to help communicate what that movement thinks. And in a sense, they'd be right, insofar as we're not, impartial people sort of recounting minute by minute what happens just generally. We're certainly have a commitment to a certain cause and want to help communicate that cause. But I'd say that that's exactly the same as what the sort of corporate Western media does. If you look at what the foreign political positions, the foreign correspondents of Western media take, media outlets such as the Wall Street Journal, and New York Times, The Guardian, they send correspondents to places like Latin America, not just Latin America, obviously all over the world, to China, to the Middle East, to Africa, to reinforce a certain foreign policy position. So you'll never see a foreign correspondent, at one of these sorts of outlets that will give a fair hearing to, for example, the movements that support the Socialist Party in Venezuela. They will always portray those movements, for example, as somehow irrational. And the same was done here in Bolivia The Guardian, which is, I mean, in the US, would probably be considered a left-wing newspaper, but in the UK is considered a sort of liberal, neoliberal newspaper. They sent a correspondent to Bolivia during the coup in November 2019. And they essentially wrote an article talking about how, well, you know, both sides seem pretty extreme and pretty irrational. On the one hand, you've got these sort of fanatical, right-wing, religious, you know, authoritarians, and on the other hand, you've got these indigenous people who see Evo Morales as a god. You know, that's pretty irrational, and maybe, you know, they're both two extremes that the Bolivian people want to avoid altogether. So I guess they would call that objective reporting. But what they're actually doing is, you know, adding to, rather reinforcing an existing foreign policy and existing discourse that paints left-wing movements, popular movements, social movements, labour unions, workers' unions, rural workers' unions, campesino unions, as, you know, somehow a malign force in society. So I think they play a role pushing, communicating the voice of a certain sector of society, and we do the same, but for a different side, but for the side of the people who today struggling for democracy in Bolivia.
Of course, yeah, I really respect that. So now I want to move on slightly. Now, so for those who might not be as informed in Bolivia, could you talk a little bit about how Canada basically contributed to the coup against Evo Morales and the legitimization of the Áñez coup regime?
Well, I think in Bolivia, there's a strong feeling against the United States, of course, going back a very long time. I think that people talk a lot about North American imperialism, and I think that's quite important. I think if you look at the role of Canada, you have to look outside Bolivia as well. Canada plays a huge role in extractive industries throughout Latin America. Companies such as Glencore have huge mining concessions in countries such as Peru and throughout the region. So they have a very clear interest in Latin America. And, you know, without a doubt, the US is certainly the sort of focal country around which the movement and financing of right-wing movements in Latin America come from. I think Canada certainly has its own interests, just as the UK does. And just like the UK, Canada can be relied upon by the US to give a seal of sort of multilateral legitimacy to what the US does. So when the US, you know, places its embassy officials as, you know, senior regime officials in the new government, as they did Áñez's private secretary, a man named Eric Ferrunda, who worked for the US Embassy for 25 years. You know, when they do things like that to be able to manage certain interests, they can always rely on the seal of international legitimacy that's given to them by the support of countries such as Canada, such as the UK, and much of the European Union. So I think that's one of the roles that Canada plays in reinforcing US intervention, in reinforcing sort of Western interest and imperialism in Latin America and in Bolivia specifically. And, you know, I'm not Canadian myself, but I'm aware that the Foreign Minister of Canada was repeated, you know, word for word, the kind of discourses that were managed by people like Marco Rubio, people like Mike Pompeo. So we'd certainly see Canada as the Canadian government, as it's currently constituted as, one of the key accomplices to United States-led intervention in Latin America. Just as in, you know, 2003, during the Iraq War and things, the support of countries like the UK was key for the United States in being able to go into Iraq and being able to sort of give a sign that this wasn't just a US adventure, this was, you know, an international mission, etc. So I think it's very important that countries like Canada and in Europe begin to form an independent foreign policy. It doesn't just follow wherever Mike Pompeo, wherever the CIA leads them.
Of course, yeah. And I mean, the Gray Zone did some great reporting on this and showed that when Chrysler Freeland became foreign minister, there was a cable with the U.S. bragging about how Canada had an America First policy. And obviously, even that year, 2017, Canada founded the Lima Group, played a key role in the imperialist OAS. And so what you're saying really couldn't be more right on the nose there. So now, basically, moving more to the present. So since August 3rd, a general strike has been ongoing, along with road blockades across the country. Could you give a quick breakdown of the key events in Bolivia through 2020 that led to this general strike?
You're right, there's a general strike going on. It began 9 days ago, called by Central Obrera Boliviana, which is a sort of national confederation of all the workers' unions across the whole country. And within that, it's not just what you might call sort of industrial unions, the proletariat, but also within that movement, within the confederation, is also campesino unions, which is to say sort of rural workers, indigenous groups in the rural areas of Bolivia, which in a sort of traditional Marxist sort of sense of the term, wouldn't be called the proletariat, they'd be called, campesinos, the peasantry, what have you. But it's those forces that have been key. They've paralyzed the key highway, they've blocked the roads, the highways in the key, in every single department of the country, in all of the key highways of the country, bringing the country to a standstill. And really, I think I've seen a lot of foreign journalists or a lot of sort of liberal commentators say, why is this happening now? Because this movement started after the elections for the third time. They postponed them from the 6th of September to the 18th of October. So people say, why this sort of enormous uprising over a month and a half delay in the vote? But of course, that's a nonsense. This movement has become so broad and so radical because of 8 months worth of abuses from the current government. So this movement, this general strike, is not called just on the terms of elections. The Central Obrera Boliviana was clear that this is also for health. The Bolivian government is among the governments that has managed COVID-19 the worst. Public hospitals have collapsed, private clinics are making huge profits throughout this time. So this movement is, to install a legitimate government that won't let people on the streets. This movement is to stop the privatization of education. There's a privatization of education going on at the moment with the excuse of COVID-19. They've closed the school year in the public schools. They say that children won't go to school for the rest of the year. They're automatically passed. That means children have lost out on the whole of their education for 2020. They only went to school for January, February, and March. Meanwhile, private schools can continue giving distance learning classes, continue giving private tutoring. That means the children of rich Bolivians can continue getting an education, whilst the vast majority are left with nothing. So it's against that. It's also against the tremendous economic crisis that has taken place since the coup. Obviously, throughout the world with COVID-19, there's been economic crisis, but the economic crisis in Bolivia started before the coup. It started when the government, with the government's austerity policies, with paralyzing a number of key development projects, industrialization projects, under sort of state-owned nationalized industries that began under Evo Morales, which are now being paralyzed and now over. As a part of the general strategy to sort of destroy public companies to then privatize them later. And the fact that during this pandemic, during COVID-19, people have been forced into quarantine without any support from the government, without any income support from the state. 38% of people in the country have lost 100% of their earnings. 52% have lost a part of their earnings. And the government has brought in no measures to support people. The only measure they brought in was a single payment of 500 Bolivianos, which is around $70 to help people with the cost of living, to last 4 months of lockdown. So people have been impoverished on a mass scale. The economic crisis that has led to companies closing down on a mass scale has led to mass unemployment, and people see that the only response of the government has been to take out loans from the IMF, has been to take out, the World Bank, more and more international loans, and people aren't seeing the fruits of these. So it is actually a general insurrection, a general uprising against calling for democracy. Because through having a democratically elected government, a legitimate government, people hope that through that you can resolve the issues of the neoliberal turn that the government has taken against the will of the population. The population doesn't want it, so with a democratic government, that would be ended. That is the mindset of the people who are protesting in Bolivia today.
Definitely. So obviously the movement has grown massively since it's begun. Now, could you maybe speak to the repression and the threats that protesters have been facing so far?
That's a very interesting question, actually, because after the coup took place, the government took an extraordinarily sort of violent role in repressing social protests. There were 2 massacres just after the coup. But since this sort of uprising began 9 days ago, the government has come out every day to threaten military intervention, to threaten police intervention against the protests that are taking place in different parts of the country. And they often come out to say, in the next few hours, if this isn't resolved, we're going to come in and repress. That hasn't happened. And that's because there are a number of reports and a number of rumours that the police are rethinking their support for the coup government. They're having to ask themselves if it's worth it, going out to kill, because that's their orders, going out to kill for a government that has, in the most recent poll show, that has the support of 15% of the population. And where do the police and military come from themselves? The top brass of the military and the police have, of course, been bought off by the regime a long time ago. But the mass of sort of ordinary rank and file soldiers, low-level officials, are people who came into the role under the government of Evo Morales, and who, their own families have been suffering during this period. Their own families have, lost their incomes during this quarantine and not received any support, while the government spends its time taking out loans from the IMF. So I think there's a general sentiment within the forces of order, so to speak. There's an equivocation. I'm not saying that they're joining the people, but I am saying that they're equivocating over whether to come out and repress, come out to kill on behalf of this sort of US-backed, Canada-backed, UK-backed regime. So instead, in the absence of the police and military, instead what the government has done is to mobilise sort of paramilitary forces. So there are a number of gangs, paramilitary groups, conformed of sort of middle-class young people in the city of Cochabamba and the city of Santa Cruz, who come out, and who are armed, by the way, who come out and attack protests in those cities. They've come out and attacked 2 points of protest in Cochabamba and Santa Cruz, 2 points that were among the weakest points of this uprising against the coup government. They haven't yet moved against the largest protests that are taking place. So I think this shows a general crisis within the government. We know they want to repress, but the issue is, how can they if they're losing support within the police and military? So I think the movement, the Campesino movement, the workers' union, the workers' movement will want to try and make an appeal to the police and military to take the side of the people and to not come out and shoot at or oppress those who are protesting and calling for democracy in the country.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the most it's horrifying, of course, to see, but basically Fernando Camacho, who is the a thug and is the longtime leader of, as you would know, the Christo-fascist paramilitary group. I think it's Union Juvenil Crucenista. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but
That's right. That's right.
yeah, and so basically, there's obviously been those threats from multiple other groups. So yeah, definitely the police and the military support is probably one of the best hopes there. But now I want to talk a little bit more about those paramilitary groups now. I want to ask basically, what is basically, I've heard that basically some journalists have been targeted by these fascist groups so far. Basically, I'm wondering to what extent basically journalists have been targeted so far.
Well, this radio that I'm working in, that I'm sitting in right now, also had offices in the city of Cochabamba, and a paramilitary group known as the Resistencia Juvenil Cochera burned down those offices on the 9th of November, the day before the coup took place. It's very understood amongst those of us who work here that if we go to the cities to report on what's happening, we can't reveal for whom we work for. We can operate quite freely here through a geographical advantage insofar as we're in a rural area. We're in the Tropic of Cochabamba, which is the birthplace of the revolutionary movement that swept Evo Morales to power. So that you have a population here that's willing to come out to defend the radio. But in the city, of course, that doesn't exist. In the city, you face much more threats. In the city, we face, offices were burnt down. In the cities, my own colleague, Lander Marca, was arrested whilst reporting on an event. So those are the kind of threats we face. As I said, our geographical location in the heartland of the movement towards socialism allows us to operate with a certain degree of freedom, which doesn't exist, unfortunately, in the cities.
Yeah, of course, it's really is a brave service, especially in these extremely dangerous situations. So now I want to obviously Kawsachun News basically recently reported that the USA actually had recently sent 2 military aircraft with weapons to the Bolivian military. So now there is a past history of the U.S. funding paramilitary death squads, particularly the Contras in Nicaragua during the 80s, and the lesser-known anti-communist militias in Indonesia during the mid-1960s, which collaborated with that military regime to slaughter more than 1 million communists. Do you think there's a risk of something similar occurring in Bolivia if the coup regime becomes desperate enough?
Absolutely, and I'm sure they want to be able to reach that level. It's the only force they can rely on completely independently. These sort of paramilitary groups, in the case of the ones in the city of Cochabamba, are made up of sort of former criminals. In the case of Santa Cruz, the Unión Juvenil Crucenista, that's a very long-standing group going back many years, based around a sort of very Christian fascist ideology, a very defined ideology. And they'll certainly be wanting to mobilize those groups. However, the issue is numbers. I haven't got the numbers. In the case of Cochabamba, they intervened against just one barricade in one part of the city, which was the weakest point of the whole city. They haven't, as I said earlier, they haven't yet sort of summoned up the bravery to attack the main, sort of the strongest points of the protest movement, which is here, the Tropic of Cochabamba, which is the city of El Alto, which is the working class districts of Cochabamba. They haven't done that so far because they're sort of small groups of 100, 200 sort of former criminals, and it'd be difficult to defeat a movement, an organized movement that is mobilizing in every single region of the country on the basis of 2 sort of gangs of former criminals and other sort of violent types. But they can do a lot of damage. These groups are armed. These groups have killed, these groups have injured people in brutal ways, and they hope that through that they can sort of put fear into people to the extent that maybe people demobilize. So that's certainly what they're trying to do. If they're able to do it is another question. But these groups certainly are armed, and they certainly are very dangerous. You can't underestimate what they can do. They led the protest against Evo Morales, which culminated in a coup. So in that sense, they were successful. They were able to defeat an entire government. But a difference, I think, now is that before they were camouflaged amongst a wider middle-class protest movement, which today is non-existent because people, are staying at home because of the pandemic. People aren't coming out to support the Agnes regime, so they're having to fight alone as a paramilitary group without being able to sort of camouflage themselves as general citizens protest movement.
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious now, has there been any international solidarity with the Bolivian General Strike so far?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who talks about Bolivia in English, I get a tremendous amount of messages of support for the Bolivian people who are protesting today. We're in the middle of actually setting up a Zoom call between former UK Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn and Evo Morales. Just today, actually, on Kawsachun News, we posted a video from the leader of the Communist Party of Canada expressing her support. And I think that will, as things intensify, that will go increasing number of movements, trade union movements in the West, number of social movements in the West will state their support for Bolivia. I think it's a shame that in countries like the UK, the Labour Party is no longer a party of international solidarity. It once was under the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn. I understand in Canada there are sections of the NDP who are very active in expressing their solidarity for people's struggles in Bolivia and Latin America and around the world. So I think it's incredibly important to boost those sections of workers' movements that already exist in the West, to be able to talk about international solidarity, and not just through a sort of general moral, isn't it awful what's happening? It is awful what's happening. The racism and the abuses that are happening in Bolivia are a moral outrage. I think by talking about Bolivia, it shouldn't just be a moral question. It should also be about revealing the real character of neoliberalism, of capitalism. Because as we've seen in Bolivia, capitalism maintains its sort of facade of democracy, and for the moment, it's very threatened. And the moment where it's threatened by a movement that demands the nationalization of the natural resources, that demands rights for the social movements of this country, that's when neoliberalism loses its liberal values and turns its guns on the people. And that's something that doesn't just take place in Latin America, it takes place throughout the world, and that can come home and take place in the West as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even there's cases where like a leading UK general basically threatened a military mutiny if Corbyn won the election, and this was back in 2015. So you're definitely right there. Now, I want to shift back a bit for a quick second. I want to ask, basically, essentially in the last, day or so, what has there been any real major events or developments that have happened in the past few days?
Well, every day at the moment since this uprising began, there's been major developments. Just today, the social movements in the city of El Alto declared that the demand is no longer election, is now the oustings of the current government. And that's important because the city of El Alto is an indigenous city that is that is next door to the seat of government, to La Paz. And it's those movements who overthrew the neoliberal governments in 2003 and 2005, in part because of their proximity to the state, to to the seat of power. So the fact that those movements radicalizing the demands is incredibly important. Just today, the national mine workers unions, which are mostly in rural areas of the country, in areas of Potosí, Oruro, they announced that they'll be taking their members to La Paz as well to reinforce those mobilizations. So the fact that the movement is radicalizing and strengthening itself in that way is an incredibly important development. And the fact that despite all of this movement on behalf of those protests, they still haven't been able to mobilize the military and the police to come out and repress, despite so many threats to do so. That I think is something worth commenting on.
All right, so I guess I want to ask basically, what do you see happening over the next few days of this general strike? Now, it's obviously very tough to predict, but just wondering what your thoughts are there.
Well, I think the movement itself has to decide what exactly its demands are. Are its demands the guarantees of free and fair elections as soon as possible, or is its demand the immediate ousting of the coup government? If its demand is the immediate ousting of the current government, that obviously requires a much more combative strategy, a strategy that could lead to deaths, could lead to major social conflict. But then those who call for guarantees for elections have to decide what guarantees looks like and if they can trust those making the promises of fair election. So the movement has to resolve that within itself. But in the next couple of days, what's certain is that every point, every barricade, every roadblock that's taking place across the country will be strengthened. More union members will be joining them, and that anger will grow even more. So, and the pressure, most importantly, the pressure on the government will grow even more. They'll feel more and more backed into a corner. That's a certainty. What's not a certainty is whether they've been able to buy off the police and military to come out and repress. I can't speak to that. I have no basis on which to say that they will side with the people or they'll side with the government. But they haven't done so until now. They haven't chosen a side until now. In the next couple of days, I'm sure we'll find out.
All right. So I guess I want to ask last, is there anything you would want to particularly mention to the people that are watching this interview?
Yeah, I think people abroad, places like Canada, always ask me, what can I do for Bolivia as someone who lives outside the country. And I think the most important thing people can do is to talk about what's going on. Because if the Bolivian government feels that no one's watching them, if they feel that no one cares, then they'll feel much more confident to go out and start shooting people, start executing people, as they did in November. But if they feel that the eyes of the world are upon them, they'll think twice. They will feel backed into a corner, and they'll get to a point where they can't rule in the way that they wanted to. I think it's important to keep talking about what's going on. At Kawsachun News, we share what's going on. We give a voice to those movements that are fighting in English. We describe what's going on in English for those who don't speak Spanish. For those who speak Spanish as well, we're at Radio Kawsachun Coca on Facebook and Twitter. In English, on Facebook and Twitter, we're Kawsachun News, or we report on what's going on in English. We provide subtitles to the speeches and the discourses of those organising these protest movements. So I think that's a resource that we can all use to raise awareness about what's going on. We have a Patron as well. Reporting these conditions are incredibly difficult under threats from the state. It creates an incredibly difficult economic situation as well. So any contribution goes to strengthening that reporting that no one else is doing, because Bolivia is still a country under partial quarantine. no international journalists can come in. No one from the BBC or from CBC or from, I don't know, The Guardian or Al Jazeera or wherever. None of them can come in. There's no one else here. We're the only ones reporting what's going on in the English language. So I think I'll just ask people to check out our social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Patreon, and to share what we're doing to raise awareness about what's going on here.
Alrighty. Honestly, Ollie, thank you so much for speaking to the Canophiles. Now, Ollie is a speaker at an event that is basically run by the Canadian Foreign Policy Institute tomorrow night. So definitely go to their website, sign up for that, and you'll get to hear Ollie and two others, Matthew Green and Guillaume Long, talk more about this, and you can learn more about it and what you can do to fight against this coup regime from Canada. All right, Ollie, thank you so much for speaking to the Canophiles.
Thank you.